Folks, we need to talk about the latest in a long line of drama surrounding Jonathan Huberdeau and his time with the Calgary Flames. After being down 2-1 in the Nashville Predators heading into the third, the Flames made a huge change. Head coach Ryan Huska would bench Jonathan Huberdeau for the entire third period, and the results would be there as the Flames would storm to a 4-2 victory. But this benching of Jonathan Huberdeau is a year after they traded for him and extended him to this huge $10.5 million contract. And with Huberdeau at 30 years old, there is a humongous crossroads here. That aging curve seemingly has caught up to Huberdeau, and right now with that mega contract, he is likely to have two back-to-back extremely disappointing years with Calgary. But is this the worst contract in the NHL right now? How likely is it to get better? What happens next with Huberdeau in Calgary? Well, make sure you watch till the end for all the news and all the trade rumors discussed, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this all throughout the year as we break down the biggest NHL stories. Now, the sad thing is with the Flames having that roaring 4-2 comeback victory, really the biggest story isn't that victory, even though it was really important for them, but it was that Jonathan Huberdeau benching, which just took over everything. And for very good reason. This team traded Matthew Tkachuk to be able to bring in both Huberdeau and Weegar, and while Weegar is having a much better season than he did in his first year at Calgary, Jonathan Huberdeau has been the exact opposite. And even though I and many other people were predicting a bounce back year out of him, it has been the exact same story time and time again. In his last year in Florida, he would total 115 points, 85 assists in 80 games. And even though Matthew Tkachuk was holding up his end of the bargain, getting even more points than he did in the season before and carrying Florida in so many ways, here comes Jonathan Huberdeau, 5th in team scoring for the Flames last season with 55 points, 15 goals in 79 games. The biggest drop off in points year to year in NHL history. That's how disappointing it was. But it also showed just how good he was even in 2022, and there was some hope with Daryl Sutter that this would be a changed system and that Huberdeau would really benefit from it. And I was one of the people, unfortunately, that really thought that same way. Sure, we wouldn't have seen Huberdeau be a great defensive player or anything, but I think we'd see him kind of get back to his game and have the freedom to get back to his game, but it's just been a disaster. You can see here he is back 5th in team scoring, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points in 12 games played, a worse point per game rate than he was at last year. That's how disappointing this has been. And you can also see in terms of plus minus on Calgary, you can see Nazem and Kadri pretty down in the dumps, but Jonathan Huberdeau by far the worst on this Flames roster. And plus minus is a flawed stat, but when it comes to Jonathan Huberdeau and the defensive results, it's not very flawed. This shows just how poor Huberdeau has been defensively throughout the entire season, and it's one of the main reasons why that benching happened. Now, Calgary Flames head coach Ryan Huska would explain why this Huberdeau benching happened in the first place.
We didn't see Jonathan Huberdeau on the ice in the third period. I'm curious as what went into that decision.
I thought Hubie had an off night, and when we went into the third period, we wanted to try to get a little bit more flow, and we went with the guys we felt were going. And that's pretty much all it came down to. And
that's a pretty serious indictment against Jonathan Huberdeau in this case. The fact that this $10.5 million player who's supposed to be the offensive player, supposed to be the player driving a line, supposed to be the player creating in the first place, is not out there when Calgary needed offense the most. Huska mentioned how it was an off night for Huberdeau, but if he can't rely on Huberdeau to be that guy, that's not a player that you're paying anywhere close to $10.5 million, maybe not even half of that. And for the player that Huberdeau is right now, you can't even justify half of that contract. Now, I forgot to mention this, but it was a point that I wanted to make, was the fact that this was not the first time that Jonathan Huberdeau actually was benched in his NHL career. You say, I've been digging a hole. Huberdeau responds to benching for his Islanders. This is all the way back in January of 2014, and this was way younger in his NHL career in a much different position. But it's not the first time that Huberdeau has had this and has had to respond to this, but this is a player that has time and time again kind of run into these inconsistency problems. And now the Calgary Flames at 30 years old is finding himself in the worst spot possible. But it just shows that coaches aren't afraid to bench Jonathan Huberdeau when they need to. And now with the Calgary Flames finding success with him on the bench with 3 straight goals in the third period, now it's a little bit of a coincidence towards Huberdeau. You can see in the Calgary Flames right now, these are the 5-on-5 stats. In terms of expected goals for per 60, when Huberdeau is out there per 60 minutes, these are how many goals he's expected to be on the ice for. You can see it's 2.31, 12 on the entire team, behind players like AJ Greer. And defensively, it's also not a pretty picture either, 2.95, which is not the worst in the world, but for Huberdeau, he's also not really providing defensive impact either. Well, defensive impact maybe in the negative way, but in the positive way, not so much. But it's funny, because of that third period benching, the Flames were starting to find some chemistry. A fantastic chance already. Srenigovic coming in, and a great save there to still keep it 2-1. But later in the shift, Srenigovic is still working off the wall. Incredible play, and he's able to set up Noah Hannafin for an absolute laser of a shot to make it 2-2. And the Flames kept coming. Great passing play here along the wall, and here comes Coleman straight in for the 3-2 lead. And Calgary continues to work hard here. With the Preds empty net, they get right into the pressure, keep it going, and Kadri, out of everybody, is the one to get the much-needed empty net goal. And Calgary was finally able to break through. You can see the difference in shots. Calgary deserved that comeback win. One of the biggest problems for this Flames team has been the superstars not showing up in any way, like Nazem Kadri, but especially Jonathan Huberdeau. I mean, even Kadri was huge in that comeback win, getting an assist on the 2-3 goal, and of course that empty netter. But the fact that Huberdeau was nowhere to be found is extremely alarming. Every player that is paid at least $10 million should be on the ice every single night in those key situations. And the fact that Huberdeau has been so inconsistent and such an unreliable player, you just can't have that for a franchise face. The problem here is, for Huberdeau, we know the talent that is at hand here. We know he can be better than he has been with Calgary, but really that's been the only consistent thing, is that he has been a problem and an inconsistent mess with the Calgary Flames. Not rushing like he used to, not using the speed like he used to, not being as confident as he used to be. This is a player that does have the talent, but putting it all together for Calgary in a big sample size has seemingly looked impossible for him. You have the poor defensive play, the lack of chemistry, the poor physical effort, and it's not hard to see why he was benched in the third. That inconsistency, not knowing who you're going to get on a day in, day out basis, is probably one of the reasons why he wasn't in the third period. He is not a reliable player right now, and there's no reason for the Flames to trust him. Now, you can make the case that Huberdeau is still kind of miscast in Calgary and doesn't really have the finisher next to him that he truly needs. You can look at the scoreboard here for Calgary, and the leading goal scorer for the team, and it's Andrew Mangiapane with 4 goals in 11 games. That's not exactly an impressive rate for most players, especially for a player leading his team in goal scoring. And the fact that that's their highest score, you can see why with Huberdeau, who is the playmaker, is the guy who sets things up, how those numbers aren't looking too great on a team like this. But to me, that is a poor excuse for a player being paid the way he is, for how long he is, and how much he's supposed to be the guy there on that Calgary roster. Sure, if you don't have finishing, that is one thing, but the effort and the consistency has just never been there, and you can't have that if you're a player like this. At this point, though, I'm just sad that we might not see prime Jonathan Huberdeau ever again, considering just how amazing he was for the Florida Panthers and just how good of a playmaker he was. It's sad that his potential in Calgary has been completely wasted, and you can see just the absolute decline since he kind of started hitting his peak back in 2019, over a point per game, just getting better and better, and since then, since he's arrived onto Calgary, it's just been a disappointing disaster. But man, to this Calgary Flames fan base, I absolutely feel for you. You have a player right now in Jonathan Huberdeau that is doing absolutely nothing for you. You guys have waited so long for a team that isn't mediocre, just get slammed in the face with something that is even worse, even more disappointing than that. Huberdeau is one of the catalysts for that, and even though he's not alone in that, Nazem Kadri has been extremely disappointing, Huberdeau, with the money he is making, has just been unacceptable. This Flames franchise is in a complete turnstile. They're in a complete no man's land situation. The best they can hope for is Huberdeau turns it around a little bit, is better for the rest of this contract, and hopefully they can start a rebuild they desperately need. But Huberdeau needs to be that guy. He needs to stop being so inconsistent, so unnecessarily bad at this point. I mean, this is a player that has the potential. We've seen it. We have seen it in this league, how dominant he can be. But the fact that at this stage in his career, he's putting up the effort that he is just unacceptable. Flames fans deserve better. The Flames deserve better than this. And it's just embarrassing what he's been doing. Now, for me, I would say technically there might be maybe a couple of contracts worse in the league right now. Maybe Marc-Edouard Vlasic's is worse for just the pure value that he puts out. I would say that's really the only contract right now that is, I guess, more embarrassing. But for San Jose, they're also at the cap floor. They don't care what Vlasic's cap it is right now, and it really doesn't affect them right now. For the Flames and their direction, they built around Huberdeau. They built around Kadri, but especially Huberdeau's cap hit has kept them from so much else, building so much else around the team. And you can see the ramifications of what we've seen. building around a player that has not been up to par, building around players like Kadri, who are just not what they used to be. Second line players at this point in their career has sunk Calgary in so many ways. Unfortunately, I just don't think this Flames team is very good, and I didn't really see them being a true playoff contender. I saw them kind of being in the middle of the Pacific Division, but right now it's looking rough. Even with 2 back-to-back wins, we'll see if Calgary can scrape by again, but right now Huberdeau needs to be better, and that's just it. Now, you could absolutely make the case that the Vlasic deal is worse, and you can see $7 million on Vlasic's deal for the next 3 seasons, taking him until 39 years old, which is just brutal. And sure, in the past, it definitely handcuffed San Jose a lot more when they were more of a contender. But at the same time, you take a look at that term again and the position that both of these teams are in. And as of right now, to me, the Huberdeau contract has a case to be made that it's worse than the Vlasic contract. Huberdeau is probably a better player than Vlasic at this stage and more of an impact player, but I think for San Jose, we all knew they were going to be bad, and they aren't building around Vlasic or anything and relying on him to be the only defenseman there. With the Flames, Huberdeau has supposed to have been the guy. He was supposed to be the player brought into the full group to energize it, to make it so much more competitive, and we've seen the exact opposite out of it. And again, the term difference, Huberdeau is locked up until 2031, with Vlasic only having 3 years left in his deal. With how much stake the Flames put into Huberdeau, in a lot of ways, it could be a worse contract for the Flames than Vlasic is right now for the Sharks. As one of the worst contracts in the league, though, right now, I could absolutely see it. Let me know in the comments down below, though, what do you guys think of Jonathan Huberdeau's contract and his stage right now with the Calgary Flames? What do you think happens next? Do you think he'll get better? Do you think he'll rebound still with Calgary? Or will this be one of the most overpaid contracts in the entire league? Let us know all your thoughts and all your predictions. Of course, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell for the breakdown and more breakdowns just like this all throughout the year, and all the support helps. Thank you guys so much for all of it. So much fun with the start of the season. We've been having so much to talk about too, which has been amazing. And of course, make sure you share the video of all the hockey fans you guys know online and click on this card for all of my hockey trade rumor content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great day, and goodbye.